Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday. It's 10 o'clock. It's time for 10 with Tim. I love you guys so much. Yesterday, as some of you know, I came on and started 3 minutes in. I had a coughing fit, had to abort. And I love you all, man. I had some of y'all messaging me, calling the church to see if I died on Facebook Live. Again, I appreciate y'all. If anybody ever throws me in a pit, man, you guys will miss me and y'all will be on it. So thank you so much for having my back. I love you all. We are in Genesis chapter 37, verses 18 to 36 today. We're at the point of Joseph being sold into slavery. So let's jump right into it. At the end of yesterday's reading, just kind of going back and thinking about that as I was reading this morning, I think it's interesting, number one, that when Joseph goes out to check on his brothers, Jacob asked him to go out and check on his brothers. Number one, these two are so oblivious to the danger. They're so oblivious to the hatred that the brothers have for Joseph. I just think that's interesting that Jacob and Joseph both seem so very insulated from the reality of that hatred. And again, I just think that's interesting. I also think it's interesting the little clues that we have that there's a famine coming. The fact that Joseph has trouble finding his brothers when they're pasturing the sheep. They have to go further and further, it seems, to find green pasture. Also, they pitch Joseph in a cistern, and it turns out to be dry. So there's no rain. I'm just kind of picking up on that stuff. And again, it seems like good pasture is hard to find. Also, just the way that Joseph is wandering around out there and somebody has to direct him. Again, and also we realize he's wandering around in that coat of many colors, right? I mean, it's this elaborate embroidered, we talked about it yesterday. It's this unisex garment worn by virgin princesses and everything else. It's really something else. He's walking around out there in the wilderness like, Liberace or Moira Rose, just out there in this, amazing nightgown. It's just crazy. And again, it just continues to emphasize Joseph's utter cluelessness and vulnerability. I mean, he's in danger. He's just walking around there like an idiot. He is not capable, at this point in the story, which is a good place to just remind you, these are the tribes of Israel. These are the sons of Jacob. And every time you run across a name, you're running across somebody that's got a tribe after them in Israel. The tribe of Judah. Judah's the one who says, oh, y'all, we can't kill him. He's our brother. Let's just sell him. That's Judah. The lion of the tribe of Judah, that's going to be Jesus. It's going to come from that tribe. And the tribe of Reuben, oh my goodness. In other words, this is the bunch. These are the ones upon whom salvation history rests. God's using these guys. Does that terrify you, or does it just make you want to praise God for his power to work good in the midst of all of our craziness, in the midst of all of the evil that we would do? God is still able to work everything out according to his purposes. And that's what Joseph's going to say later. Y'all meant this for evil. God used it for good. God can do it. If God can use these clowns, God can use you and me, So they see him coming from a distance, no doubt, because of the, fancy cape. They see him coming from a distance and they start talking. Now, this is interesting. First off, in verse 19, here comes the dreamer. That's what New Living Translation says. What they say there is actually much more extravagant. They say, here comes the dream lord. Literally, the dream lord. Here comes the dream master. It's just dripping with sarcasm and hatred. Here comes the dream lord. What should we do? Let's kill him. Come on, let's kill him. I mean, that's just the first words out of their mouth. And they mean it. They mean it. Let's kill him. And why do they want to kill him? Again, I just think it's interesting. Let's kill him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams. So honestly, and I've never really noticed that, honestly, till reading through it with you all, they want to kill him because of his dreams. That's the motive. There are 1,000 reasons to hate him, but the reason to kill him is just to make sure that his dreams never come to pass, because the dreams involved, the brothers, kneeling down and worshiping him, and they'd rather be dead themselves than worship this clown, And so I think that's interesting that they want to kill him because of his dreams. The dream lord, they want to kill him so that his dreams never come to pass. Now, at that point, Reuben, the older brother, steps in. Now, remember, Reuben is the one that has already slept with his father's wife, Bilhah, right? And so we know that he sort of lost his moral authority, and that's sort of obvious here in the way that they listen to him, don't really listen to him. He doesn't really seem to have a lot of influence over what his brothers do. Anyway, his idea is, let's don't kill him. Let's fling him into the pit. Let's fling him into the cistern. His plan was to come back and rescue him, which I suppose is an admirable plan. At any rate, let's don't kill him. Let's fling him into the pit. He uses their language, so it's kind of good persuasion there. Let's fling him into the pit without killing him. The implication there is he's going to die in the pit anyway. You know, it's in the middle of the wilderness. He's not going to be able to climb out. No food, no water. He's going to die in the pit, but then at least they don't have to, be guilty of killing him. That's the plan. Reuben's plan prevails for a moment. They fling him into the pit. Then they all sit down to eat. Again, it's a picture of their utter lack of empathy, utter disregard for the suffering of Joseph. They could care less. They hate him. And the fact that he is suffering now, starving, dying in this pit, they can still sit down and eat their lunch. It's just an interesting picture of their lack of concern. Now, one thing, I just wonder at what point Joseph, it dawns on him, they hate me because it never crossed his mind before. He lived with this utter cluelessness, but from now on, again, we don't hear anything out of his mouth for a while, but next time we see Joseph, he's a different man. And something tells me it's about this time right here when this boy grows up. He got to grow up. And right about now, he's got to realize, man, they hate me and I'm in real trouble, I think the irony here is that Joseph is starving in the pit and the brothers sit down, the Hebrew says, to eat bread. And then finally, at the end of the story, everyone else is starving and Joseph is going to feed bread to the world. I just think that's kind of interesting. There are lots of connections and flashes forward and flashes backward. The great flashback is in the next part. When Judah says, hey, let's don't kill him. If we kill him, we'll just have to cover up the crime. Let's sell him. At least we'll have a little pocket change. Let's just sell him for the money. And so that's ultimately what they do. Now notice in verse 31, that they strip him, that they take that coat that they despise, that they strip the coat, and then they kill a young goat and dip the coat in the blood. Now, again, it's a flashback, and you're intended to remember the way that Jacob deceived his own father. What happened? It involved the killing of the goat for the meat, but also the goat skins that were put on his arms, and so there's this deception that involves the killing of a goat, and involves the garment. He put on Esau's garment. You remember all of that? So all of that irony comes forward in this great deception for Jacob. The boys are ultimately cowards, so they send the garment ahead with a messenger. They don't really want to face their father. I guess, they could be killers, but they don't want to be liars, so they're just like, look, we found this. What do you think it is? They don't really want to have to, look Jacob in the face. But Jacob tears his clothes. He knows exactly what this is, and he assumes that he knows what happens. He uses the words that the brothers had used in plotting the plan that a wild animal has devoured him. And that's what they said he would think. And he says those words. He falls for their deceit. Most of the time in the Old Testament, the mourning period is defined. But notice that Jacob says, I will go to my grave mourning, the death of this boy. I think that's fascinating. He assumes that he will never recover from this level of grief. One more thing, I noticed this today. The Ishmaelite traders, I did a little research on that because Ishmael's still alive. And the Ishmaelites at this point in the story would be like their first cousins. You know what I mean? Ishmael was their uncle. And he's still alive, and there can't be like, Ishmaelites, everywhere like that. So obviously it's a generic term. Later they're called Midianites. It's just they're semi-nomadic Arab traders, and those terms are used kind of generically to refer to them. At any rate, they take him to Egypt. They sell him to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. He is the captain of the palace guard, and the story's going to go from there. Like I say, to this point, Joseph was the kind of guy that any one of us, I'd have thrown him in a pit too. But from this point on, he's going to be a different man. And when God does what God's going to do, this man is going to do something important for the whole world. Isn't that a great lesson? Don't you ever give up on anybody. Don't you ever throw anybody in the pit thinking that they can't ever change, that they can't ever be anybody, because I'm telling you, you haven't seen the end of any one of our stories yet. What God does is going to be good always. I love you guys. Tomorrow, chapter 38, verses 1 to 30, in the house of Potiphar. Tomorrow, chapter 38, verses 1 to 30. I love you guys. Have a good Wednesday. Stay in the Word. Don't forget to read ahead. I can't read your Bible for you. I can celebrate what we read together. We can talk about what we learn, but I can't read it for you. You need to read it, be in the Word. So don't get lazy. Chapter 38, 1 to 30 for tomorrow, and I'll see you